So yeah, we got the Yamaha Crosscore RC, and we're gonna unbox it. You're gonna see what we get in the box. The color is not what I expected, but I'll bring it up here just to show you. All right, so that's what it looks like in the box. So looking at that red, it's a little more crimson than I expected it to be, but it looks like it's pretty well packaged. See if we can get it out of the box. Super easy compared to the Wabash. So that is one side. That's the other side, the drive side. And yeah, that's it for bike. Let's see what comes in this little big box. So if my memory serves me, this is the charger. Seats and seat post. And I believe this is going to be all the documents and the keys and everything like that. Let's get this big box in the way. And then back this all up. Right. And then we'll try to get in here and see what we can find in the box. So, just as I suspected, charger, seat, very cushy. I kind of like the seat that's on the Wabash, but I kind of like this too. I could get used to it. All right, and then lastly, let's open up this little box right here and see what we get. Right, pedals, very similar to what we had on the Wabash RT. These look to be reflectors. Yep, reflectors and a bell, I believe. Yep, reflectors and a bell. And it's a through axle. I don't know if you can see that. Looks like the through axle probably for the front wheel. So it is boost and not the typical thinner. And then we got our manuals, the typical thinner skewer. Now, that's kind of what I thought was going to come with the bike, because the bike is this is more like a city bike. But the fact that it comes with this tells me that they built it to be a bit more robust, which I like that. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start taking off all of these packaging materials and start building the bike. I lied. I remember this from last time now. The keys are mounted back here, not in that little box. Right. All right, we got our front wheel. Okay. 40 to 65 PSI. And it is, what size is it? Here we go. 50-584 27.5 by 2.0. Nylon tire by CST. Ooh, so it's not some kind of high-end tire. Not nearly as nice as the tire that you got on the Wabash. We just got done unpacking the majority of the materials on this bike. It's kind of the same story as the Wabash RT. We got the bars turned, though not flipped or anything like that. They're kind of set up right in the setting where they should be. We just really have to turn this top stem to be able to align it with the forks. We got a SR Suntour fork here. Next E25, so that tells me that the fork is probably tuned for the weight of an e-bike, so it's just a little bit heavier action in there. I'm looking at the frame and everything. It says it's a large. I'm also looking here, and I mentioned this in my other video, but I don't know if you guys watched it, so I'll just mention it here. This battery tray is also open on it a little bit, just the same as my other bike was, the Wabash RT, whenever I got it. And we can close that. And it's cinched down now, but it was definitely open, which leads me to believe that the same thing is going to happen with this bike that happened with the Wabash. This battery, as soon as I open this thing up, this battery could fall out on the floor. So I'm going to be very careful because this battery actually, this bottom piece right here, if you didn't watch my other video, the battery lives in this tray, and it kind of just like it gets placed in this tray and then seated up, right? And so anyway, all that to say, just be careful if this thing is dislodged whenever you get your bike and you're putting it together, because your battery might fall out the first time. Once it's secured in there, I haven't had any issues with it falling out additionally. But yeah, so anyway, that's a little excerpt about that. It has a really big front cog. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 speeds. And traveling around the city and whatnot, I think 9 speeds is fine. I've got a specialized Turbo Taro that has 9 speeds on it, and I do just fine with it. Whenever I'm climbing on my mountain bike trail or something like that, I could use a little bit more range, but it works for me. I don't know if I like this little chunky section right here. Just looking at it, I didn't notice that was there on the Wabash RT, but it is. So maybe it just gives the frame a little bit more rigidity. You definitely can see the welds. I did hear somebody mentioning that before, where you can see the welds on the bike a little bit more than you typically would, but I'm okay with seeing the welds and it being good welds than not being able to see the welds and them being bad welds, kind of like on a cheaper bike. So with all that said, let's get into putting it together. First thing we're going to do is put the seat on. First thing we're going to do is go get our tools. First thing we're going to do is trip over the seat while we're getting our tools to install the seat. Here we go. This is going to be a 4mm. I've got my handy dandy little set here of Allen keys. I'm just going to use this little ratchet to be able to do it. If you use a tool like this, it is easier, but you could over torque it, so just be careful of that. I don't see any tools that came with the bike, so I'm assuming you would have to have your own tools. But that being said, if you don't already have your own tools, go get some Allen keys. You could use it for anything. It's probably like $5 or $10 at Walmart or less. Anyway, let's back this seat off. It's interesting that this is tightened down. I guess maybe they had to do it to ensure that this piece didn't come off. One thing about using this is if you're not careful with it, you could hit the frame, scratch it up pretty good. So just be careful of that. I almost did that just myself. One comment about this seat that the Wabash does have and this doesn't have is markings. I don't see any kind of markings on the back of the seat to tell me if I'm in the right spot, wrong spot, adjust it 1mm, 2mm, whatever. There's just a little zoomed sizing here for the seat post. Well, you might take a picture of that if you want to potentially put a different seat post in it at some other point, because typically those markings, once they're in here and the seat post is moved up and down a little bit, they tend to fade away. I'm going to take and use my screwdriver rather than the ratchet for now. All right, tighten that down. You don't want to tighten any one down well before the other, so just tighten it to where it's a little bit snug, and then go ahead and tighten the other side, tighten this side, and then just keep going at it until it's snug. And again, this doesn't have to be super tight. Right now, you're probably going to make adjustments, but just get it to where it holds it in place. And then you can move along to the next item, which would be the pedal, I think. So I'm going to have the same comments about these pedals that I had on the Wabash. After riding the Wabash over 100 miles so far, I don't have a problem with them. They work pretty well. They're not the grippiest of pedals, but the thing I would say is that they're not as wide as typical pedals are. But that's a good thing for me because you can end up fitting in between bikes and other stuff like that, or bikes and cars and all that stuff, and not worry about fitting them on the side. But anyway, you're going to have two pedals. One of them is going to be marked with an R, and one of them is going to be marked with an L. The R goes on the right side, drive side. L goes on the left side. You are going to need a wrench for this. I believe it is a 14 or 15 millimeter. Let's go ahead and try the 14 or 15 millimeter. So what you're going to need to know, if you don't already know this, if you're going to put these pedals in and use them for a long time, grease this up and then put it in with your fingers, finger tight, and twist towards the front of the bike. Twisting towards the front of the bike tightens it on both sides. Twisting towards the back of the bike will loosen it off. So twist it in as far as you can, finger tight, come back here. You may have to hold the other side and then cinch it down with your wrench. You don't have to make it extremely tight, but just snug, and then you can come back later and tighten it up even more. Opposite on the next side, you're just going to take it and you're going to twist the pedal with your hand towards the front of the bike to tighten, just feeding it into the threads and tight. Right. Then you take your wrench, tighten it to the front of the bike as tight as you can. Well, excuse me, not as tight as you can. Firm. You can't over tighten pedals and you can't strip them out. So anyway, so do it to where it's snug. You may end up having to hold this while you're also pressing forwards on the bike in order to keep it from moving around on you while you're tightening it up. But that's how you put the pedals. Actually, you know what? Before we put the front wheel on, we're going to push this headset towards the front. So it looks like it's going to be the same size, the 4 millimeter, as the seat post, which is super cool because if you're on the trail or something like that and you need to make adjustments, you can just take one Allen key with you, or maybe a couple of Allen keys with you rather than 4. Okay, let's turn those forks towards the front. We've loosened this off just enough. We're also going to have to loosen off the top cap. So forgot about that. Okay. So you're going to loosen off this top cap, and then should be able to at that point turn it towards the front. You want to line it up as best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect right away, but try to get as tight or get it as straight as you can, and then tighten down that center cap. Oh, sweet. So you hold that, tighten that on that center cap. And you don't want to tighten this all the way back down to where it was because you're likely going to have to readjust it once you get the front wheel on. So, do kind of like we did with the seat. Tighten one down, and then come tighten the other one down a little bit. You don't have to tighten them both all the way down first time. Come back, tighten this one again, These, same thing as with the seat. They don't have to be incredibly tight, especially if you're doing like I'm doing and using a wrench or something, you get more leverage on it than a typical Allen key. You don't want to over tighten these. Torque specs right here on the side. All right, so we've got the handlebars facing forward. We've got the seat on. Next thing we're going to do is put the front wheel on. So to put the front wheel on, we need the skewer, which I have lost. Here it is. One good thing about this bike, you can't see it, but there's a kickstand. And that kickstand is going to allow me to put this wheel on. One thing about front brakes, you have to take this little red piece out of between the brake pads before you put the front wheel on. So make sure you take that out, pull the bike up, line up the rotor, brake rotor, between the two front pads. And then you also have to line up the front fork. Oh, this is going to be fun. Actually, you know what, guys? I'm going to show you a better way. Okay, I got a little rug. Take that, put it down. I'm going to flip the bike over like this. I'm going to put the handlebars down with the screen and the computer and all that stuff on the rug so that you don't scratch it up. And now I'm going to take this front wheel, make sure the rotor is in between the brake pads, put that directly in. One thing I didn't mention whenever I put the Wabash together that I'll mention now, there should be one side with threads and one side without threads. Looking here, which side is the threaded side? It doesn't look like it has threads. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know what that is. It's interesting. Let's try it out. Let's just see what happens. It goes in. Okay. It's in on both sides. Okay. Weird. Okay. All right. So that's very interesting. Never had that happen before. Never had this type of setup on a bike before. It's very interesting. These little things right here, once you get on the other side, whole thing pops out, protrudes. And then this kind of flares out and holds it in place. It's very interesting. And this right here, so you're going to see this little flat spot right here. I don't know if you can see it. There's a flat spot. So you're going to flip this over into the flat spot, and that's how you're going to tighten it up. Before, whenever I was doing the Wabash RT, I was actually using this little thing to try to twist it, and that was kind of tough. So then I found out that there's this little space where you can flip this into and use this to crank it into it. Anyway, let's put this really interesting, I don't know if it's boost or not. I watched the video yesterday, and it was of people in Japan and how they bike, and apparently Yamaha, the huge thing over there, they got way more bikes than what they offer in other places in the world. But anyway, let's see. So you hold this little other piece, you twist this, and then you cinch it down. So, okay, so just like a skewer, you have to kind of loosen it off a little bit to where it's not so tight so that you can clamp it down. Okay. Cool. Yeah. And now it's seated in and everything's good. So we got the front tire on. We've got all the pieces on. We're going to go ahead and cut off this little piece on the back tire, which I checked on the Wabash before to make it to where it was more stable. But because this has the handy dandy kickstand, which I need on the Wabash as well, it's super easy. So then we take the bike and we're going to go ahead and flip it over opposite of what we did earlier. Put it up like that. And now we need to put air in the tires. One thing to know if you have not had a higher end bike before, it is that these wheels use Presta valves versus the Schroeder valve or Schrader valve that you're used to. So you may end up having to get a pump that will specifically work for those. One thing I don't think I mentioned for the top two, or for the top cap, the size is 5 millimeters. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go get my pump, and then we're gonna fill the tires up to the recommended pressure. It is between 40 and 65 PSI. So we're gonna go ahead and go like 60 PSI, just shy of the high point. Yeah, got my handy dandy foot pump. This foot pump has one for the Schroeder valve and one for the Presta valve. So if you see a bike pump from at Walmart, I got it at Walmart, so it's super cheap. It's nothing expensive. You take this little thing off. Oh, take your top cap off, which I lose all the time. I've already lost it on the Wabash. And then there's a little piece right here, a little piece of metal that you twist off, and you'll know when it's loose so that you can actually get a little bit of air out of the tires. Then you're going to take the Presta valve side, push it on, lock that into place, and then you're going to start airing the tire up. Tighten that back down just like we did on the back. Put the cap back on. And voila, we're good to go. Bike is done. Let's try to see if we can power it on and see if there's any juice in the pack. Nothing. Nada. This computer is a little bit loose though, so I'm going to have to tighten that up. So the bike is not responding from just trying to turn it on. And this happened to me before with the other bike too, because the battery had kind of fallen out. I think it had a little bit of charge, but because the battery had fallen out, I wasn't able to present with anything. So let's go ahead and plug it up. You don't see it. It's on this other side. I have a plug-in already for my Wabash RT. It should be the same. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. It is charging. Let's just see if the battery or the display turns on whenever it's plugged up. And it does. All right. And the battery does show a little bit of charge. It's just like it did last time. Before the bike wouldn't turn on, and then I plugged it up and I turned it on, and it had a little bit of charge in the pack. But I guess for some reason, maybe it's in this mode where it doesn't turn all the way on until it's plugged up. I'm not sure, but that's the situation right now. Let's make sure it works really quick. So there's actually a dedicated light button on here. Let's see if that's on my Wabash too. Yeah, actually, the Wabash has the same computer on there. It looks very similar. Yeah, it is the same computer. And you just push this little button, and the light turns on. Okay, there we go. It's not incredibly bright, but it's decent. So anyway, that is it, guys. That's the unboxing and build of the Crosscore, Yamaha Crosscore RC. I believe that's what this bike is called. And yeah, I would say it's easier than putting together the Wabash RT. The Wabash RT wasn't really even that bad to put together, but this bike was even easier. And I would say just from unpackaging it, there is a little bit of grease here at the top of the headset. The only thing that I'm not in love with are the brand of tires. That's not such a big deal. I'll run these tires out, and then once they're worn, I'll put a good set of tires on it. And we'll see how they perform. Maybe they do well. A lot of times off-brand tires are not terrible in good riding conditions. It's just whenever it's wet or wearing over time or something like that, they tend not to be the best. But if you ride your bike for any distance at all, you wear out the tires and you can put new tires on anyways, or you'll just want to get tires that match your color or accent the color that you put on with like different colored pedals or something like that. And so it's really not that big a deal. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching. If you like this video, give me a like. If you want to see more content on this bike, consider subscribing. And if you have something specific you want me to do related to this bike or any other bike I have in the garage, comment down below and let me know. Thanks for watching, guys. Out.